Do you believe in miracles? Some of you didn't say anything, but I can ask you that question again later this afternoon. And you can say, Reverend Boss spoke and was done in less than 15 minutes, so yes, I believe in miracles. What is a miracle? How do we know whether something that we read in the Bible or something that happens in our lives is a miracle? Well, there's a really simple way, and you heard it in the scripture just now. It's a miracle if it says it's a miracle. That was the first miracle that Jesus did in his ministry, and we know that because it's right there on the page. It's really easy to get a good test score when the answer sheet is right there in front of you. We can also know it's a miracle, and a lot of people will say this, it's a miracle if it is impossible, and yet it happens anyway. It's a miracle if it's big and flashy, and some churches will use the word supernatural, that the laws of nature had to be suspended in order for this to happen. It could not possibly happen unless God had done it. I'm not sure about that definition for a couple of reasons. One is because there are many things that we count as miracles that aren't supernatural and aren't necessarily even that flashy and spectacular. Jackson demonstrated how something as ordinary as a coin and a little damp piece of paper can produce a feeling of awe and wonder. You could say, in a way, that's kind of an ordinary miracle. The music this morning was about the hiding place. The hiding place is the story of a woman, I believe she was in the Netherlands, named Corrie ten Boom. During the Holocaust, she spent a lot of time and energy hiding Jewish refugees in her home and the homes of others, and was able to save many, many lives as a result. If you ask the people who she saved, was that a miracle? I think most of them would say, well, there was nothing supernatural there, but it was absolutely a miracle. So a miracle does not need to be big or flashy, does not need to defy the laws of nature, doesn't need to be impossible. In fact, some things that do appear to be impossible and that are big and flashy and dramatic aren't miracles at all. In fact, there are people who professionally create big, flashy, impossible things. We call them magicians, or some of them we call con men. There are a number of people who find ways to take advantage. They say, if I do something that seems impossible, if I fake that I'm healing someone and convince the people out there that I've healed them, if I do something dramatic and people can't explain it, and it seems like I've read their minds or seen the future, or, well, they will trust me because only someone who is good and holy and wise and powerful could do something like that. So they'll trust me. They'll believe what I'll say, that maybe they'll do what I want them to do. Maybe they'll send me lots of money. Beware of people who do things that seem to be impossible, because by itself, that's no miracle. The way I was taught in seminary to look for a miracle was, they said, it depends on who learns something from it. It depends on the hearer. There's a passage that talks about how Jesus went among the people of his home region and did lots of wonders, but he healed many people and he did impossible things, but he could do no miracles among them. And my professor in seminary said, miracles would have been if what he had done had touched them and taught them and changed them. If the miracle had helped them to see something that they didn't know about God. If the miracle had helped them to see something they didn't know about how to live their lives as people of God. But the cynical people in Jesus' hometown didn't ever see any of that. And so they only got the special effects. They didn't get the miracle. If the miracle is for the people who are watching, it makes me kind of wonder about today's story, about the first miracle Jesus did at the wedding in Cana. Because nobody really saw that. I mean, who was that miracle for? Jesus was at a wedding, and his mother was there also. And wherever they were, someone noticed that they were running out of wine. And they came to Jesus' mother and said, "We're running out of wine. We don't know what to do." And she said, "Oh, well, don't worry. Jesus, can you take care of this?" I really like Mary in this story. And Jesus did not want to. He's actually a little rude to his mother. He says, "Woman, this has nothing to do with me or with you." Has anyone ever tried calling their mother woman? I never have. I don't have that much nerve. I really don't. It wouldn't go well. But Jesus really doesn't seem to want to be bothered. He says, "My time is not yet come." And Mary, like a good mother, pays absolutely no attention to his protests and says to the servants, "Hey, do whatever he tells you to do. It'll work out." So Jesus says, And he goes with the servants to two big vats. He says, "Fill these with water." And they fill them with water, and the vats are about 60 gallons apiece. And he puts the lid on the vat and says, well, no, he doesn't. He just tells them, "Okay, go and get the wine steward and have him come and dip out something." And the wine steward comes, and he dips it out, and he says, "Oh, my. This is wine. It's good wine." He doesn't know where it's come from, because he goes to the groom and says, "Hey, this is really good." I mean, most people at this point are going to figure all the guests are tipsy enough, they're not going to know the difference, and they're going to sneak in the cheap stuff. But you've saved the best for last. The groom doesn't know where it's come from. He just knows, hey, we're running out of wine, now there's wine. This is good. The guests don't know. We can't even tell if the servants know, the guys who fill the containers, because they just kind of drop out of the story at that point. Jesus' mother knows, but I'm not sure that counts, because she's the one who said he could do it. She knew all along, so there's not really a change there. Who is the beneficiary of the miracle in this story? We know who the beneficiary of the wine is. The wedding party goes on, and it's joyous and happy, but who's the beneficiary? Who learns something about God and something about what it means to follow God? And I think the answer is, in the story, we don't see anyone, but the story is told to us so that we can get the benefit of the miracle, so that we can learn something about God, because there's a lot in here that is symbolic. Wine is used a lot in the Gospels. Wine is used a lot in the New and Old Testament. It's a symbol of abundance. It's something that you see at times of joy, at celebrations. Wine is a sign of the bounty of God's gifts. And God's kingdom in Jesus' parables is often compared to a vineyard, to a place where grapes are grown and wine is made. And so wine reminds us that with Jesus there, God's bounty is not going to go weak or run out. God's bounty will be abundant. Can you imagine how big a wedding party would have to be to run through 120 gallons of good wine? There's more than enough. It's set in a wedding, and wedding is another thing that we see used both in the New Testament and the Old about God's relationship with people. In the Old Testament, God is often compared to a groom. to a husband, and the people of Israel, the faithful people, as the bride. And you can kind of turn it around. It's not sex specific, so you can look at it as God as the bride and the people as the groom too, and it doesn't really lose anything. The point is, when you've got two people in a wedding and one of the partners is unfaithful, as you find so often in the Old Testament stories, the relationship becomes strained. It even seems to be broken. By taking the role of the groom, because it was the groom who was supposed to supply the wine for the party, the wine for the wedding feast. By taking the role of the groom, Jesus is basically saying, hey, if you people are the bride, don't feel rejected. No matter how strained or even broken the relationship with God has been, I'm here to say this can be a happy marriage, a joyful marriage, a good relationship again. We benefit from the story. We benefit from the miracle because it gives us hope. It gives us hope that we can be, when we regret things in our lives, we can be better. We can be kinder. We can be wiser. We can be more courageous. We can be closer to God and more in harmony with all the good things that God gives us. It tells us that God is not through with us, that in Christ, God is renewing that relationship. And God is always renewing that relationship. It's not, it certainly seems like a supernatural miracle. It's not maybe as big and dramatic as we normally get it because we don't have anybody recognizing that something's happened. But I think that gets us to the other part of what is a miracle, because miracles can be things that seem very ordinary. When I was in college, I signed up for a mission trip that a local group was putting together that went down to Central America. I went to Honduras, and we were giving people vaccinations, and it was the first time I had ever been more than like 2 states away from home. And I didn't speak Spanish. I was originally supposed to go to an English-speaking island called St. Kitts. And that part of the program fell through, and I was originally supposed to be helping with veterinary inoculations, and that part also fell through. And so I was doing something I didn't feel prepared for in a place where I didn't speak the language, with people who I didn't really know. And I was not happy and confident at that time. In fact, the first day we were supposed to go out, I think it might have been a combination of strange schedule, strange diet, and just feeling completely homesick and out of my depth. I felt nauseous when I got up in the morning, or nauseated, excuse me. And if I felt nauseous, I'd be making everyone else sick. But they weren't, I was. So they said, why don't you stay home and rest, and you'll go out tomorrow? And I said, sure. And so my 2 partners went off with the local nurse to go do a vaccination. And she showed up riding a white horse, and they thought, oh, we're going to ride horses. They found out pretty quickly that wasn't exactly true. She was going to be riding a horse. And they were expected to keep up and carry the medical supplies. Well, they were out having a rough day while I was sitting around gradually feeling better and better. And I kept expecting them to come back. I expected them to be back a little after lunch, but by 2, 3, 4 o'clock, they still weren't back. And it got to the point where the sky was starting to dim just a little bit. And so I went to the home of the only person I knew in town who could speak English, and he wasn't there. And so I figured, okay, well, I need to, if they're coming back now, they're not going to get here before dark. And they don't have flashlights because they didn't think they were going to be out this late. So I grabbed a big flashlight and I headed out down the road in the direction they had gone, hoping to meet them on the way back. And I first ran into a lady on a horse who had a little village girl running along behind her carrying a torch. And my friends were not with her. And I tried to ask her, and she said, "Yeah." So I kept on going. And by now, it was getting really dark, and it was kind of an overcast night, and I couldn't see the stars, and the moon wasn't out, and we were in the mountains of Honduras, which are very heavily forested, and I was kind of getting freaked out and thinking, how am I going to know? If they come back on a different path, I'm going to miss them completely. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know where they are. I don't know how I'm going to find them. And that's when I heard the rifle. I don't know who was firing it or why or at what, but I heard bam, bam, bam. 3 shots so close together, I figured it must have been a military rifle of some kind. And I thought, oh my. I didn't remember this in the orientation. And I thought, what do I do? I can keep on going, which I know would be the right thing to do because they need the light and they're out there and there's maybe somebody with a gun out in the woods and I don't know what's going on, but I know it would be best to find them and make sure they get back. Okay. And then I thought, no, the smart thing to do is turn around and head for the village as fast as I can and make sure I get back. And I sat down on a log by the trailside and I prayed. And as I sat there with my eyes closed praying about what to do, I saw an image up here of an Advent wreath with the candles burning. And I thought, oh, good grief. Because that was the direction going further down the road. And I thought, okay, God, if this is a sign, it's a dumb sign, because I know I need to go that way. If I'm going to find them, I know that's where they are, but I felt a little like Jesus must have when his mother said, go and take care of this. No, I don't want to. But I figured I might as well stand up and turn on the light and head down the road a little bit. So I stood up and turned on the light, and there they were. The 2 people I was partnered with, stumbling along in the darkness, and they were very happy to see me. And they were even happier to see the flashlight. They were thinking that they were going to have to cross, that they would not be able to find the log that bridged the stream further on down the path. They were going to have to wade through, and they were scared, and they weren't entirely certain they were on the right path. And it worked out. And I thought, it's a miracle. I don't know that there's anything supernatural happening there, and there wasn't anything big or dramatic. I had this image in my mind of the Advent wreath, and my first response, well, I told you what that was. This is silly. This is the dumbest sign I've ever seen, ever heard. But it felt like a miracle. And I have come to believe that the way you tell whether it's a miracle is not whether it's big or dramatic or seems impossible. The way you know whether it's a miracle is that things come together in such a way that you know you're in the presence of God. We're always in the presence of God, but sometimes we get that little gift when things come together just right so we can see it and we can reaffirm that idea that we're always in the presence of God. And it reminds us that when we are alone and frightened and hurting and we want to do the right thing and we know what the right thing is, but we just think it's impossible, God is with us. And with God, nothing is impossible. So as you go through life, remember, miracles are not just possible, they're all around us all the time. Sometimes we get a chance to see them, but always they're there, giving opportunities for God through us to make the impossible possible.